We began this segment a few minutes ago with the President Trump last night saying that this war is already won. Is the U.S.'s definition of winning the same as Israel's?
Very good question. Good to be with you. It's a question that's being asked by many Israelis today. Israel had very specific goals to certainly prevent Iran from rebuilding its nuclear program, to deny Iran the ability to manufacture these very, very large missiles that have been hitting Israel, about each one with about a ton of explosives in their warhead, and finally to bring about the cessation of Iranian support for terrorist proxies throughout the Middle East. They're trying to destroy us even tonight. And originally, that was also America's position. I don't think that the Israelis would agree that almost all the targets have been destroyed in Iran. And I think that the issue is, in the end, what does the day after look like? Tonight, the Iranian president issued basically conditions to the United States, saying there has to be just an unconditional ceasefire, but the United States has to pay reparations to Iran, and the United States has to issue guarantees that Iran will never again be attacked. So that gives you, I think, an idea of where the Iranian mindset is. They do not believe they're on the verge of defeat.
Okay. Well, Ambassador, and thank you again for joining us on Bloomberg TV and radio. You have suggested that there will be no Mount Suribachi moment in this conflict, referring to the flag raising on Iwo Jima. When will then? How will we know that this war is won?
Well, there'll be one of two ways. One, if the Iranian regime says, okay, we're not going to make a nuclear weapon, we're not going to make ballistic missiles that can hit Israel, we're not going to support terror anymore. Or, barring that, a popular uprising, or perhaps even a coup within the regime, within the ranks of the IRGC or perhaps the army.
Okay.
Now, to achieve that, it may be a long-term proposition. It's a big question whether the president and the people of the United States are up for that. And here the model would not be Iraq and Afghanistan, those forever wars, but really the Cold War, where the United States remained very steadfast over a long period of time and brought about the fall of the Soviet Union.
Well, that's incredible to consider, because then we are talking quite a longer time horizon than the Trump administration is suggesting. Knowing that the administration in recent days has been very careful to say regime change essentially is not what they are seeking, but it would be a welcome outcome if it indeed happens. From Israel's perspective, knowing the son of the late Ayatollah is now in power, we got our first statement from him today. Is it going to be acceptable to Israel for the younger Khamenei to still be in power in Iran? Or would you anticipate that until that situation changes, Israel at least will declare that it is not over?
I think, well, it's not so much the person, it's his position. If his position is to maintain Iran's campaign, which began back in 1979 and reiterated every day since then, to destroy the state of Israel, then the new supreme leader, Mojtaba, will also be considered an enemy, and by the way, a legitimate target for Israel. And that is on our unassailable right to pursue that. If the supreme leader would come out and say, in one way or another, okay, we're going to change direction, and we're not going to seek destruction of Israel and our neighbors or the United States of America, it might be something different. I just don't see that happening. I think that those three goals of destroying Israel and the United States and dominating the Middle East are in the DNA of this regime, and it's almost impossible for them to change.
Interesting, Ambassador. With that said, there are multiple reports today, including one from Reuters, that finds U.S. intelligence indicates Iran's leadership is still largely intact and not at risk of collapse, with a multitude of intelligence reports pointing to consistent analysis that the regime is not in danger and retains control of the Iranian public. Is it possible to change that dynamic without going in on the ground?
It is, but again, it's the long term. I mean, I referenced earlier the Cold War. I think that at some point the intense military stage of this campaign will end. That Iran's missile launchers and drone launchers and factories will be destroyed, and I think that's happening, slowly but surely every single day. And eventually, they'll run out of these missile launchers and the drones, and then the United States could impose a very punishing and strict naval blockade on Iran, ensure that not a drop of oil gets out, certainly no munitions will get in. And then over the course of a certain period of time, probably a protracted period of time, the Iranian regime will finally wither on the vine and be in a position to be overthrown either by the people or by elements within the regime itself.
When we consider, Ambassador, that this is no longer just combat operations in and around Iran. Iran obviously has cast a wide net in terms of retaliation to other Gulf states, even as far as Turkey, where NATO has had to intervene. But Israel also has looked to the north, and there is active firing between Israel and Lebanon and Hezbollah specifically. Even if there is some kind of resolution with Iran, the Islamic regime itself, what of that conflict? How is that brought to an end?
Well, that's a very pertinent question tonight. I was in the north yesterday, and the situation there remains very dire. Last night, the north was hit by about 250 rockets from Lebanon. Some of them were quite long range, not just striking the north, but also central Israel. And so I think that the goal there would have to be that even if the United States says, okay, we're ready for a ceasefire with Iran, that Israel has to insist on pressing the campaign against Hezbollah. And there's very specific reason for this. Much of the Israeli north has been rendered uninhabitable by these missile attacks. And unless Hezbollah is decisively defeated, and in a way that the Lebanese government can regain control over its own territory, particularly in the south, those areas in northern Israel will remain, some of these cities are ghost cities. It's quite despairing. So that is an intolerable situation for any sovereign state, certainly for the state of Israel. And we hope that the United States will continue to give us the very green light we've received up to now in combating Hezbollah.
Mm-hmm. Ambassador, with regard to the Iranian regime, I noticed a post on Twitter that was reposted by our ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz. It's from author Saul Sadka, who writes, the regime's top brass seems to have decamped to the distant city of Mashhad, as far away from the U.S. bases and carriers and from Israel as you can get without actually fleeing to Afghanistan. Have you heard that report? Is that the case? And the ambassador retweets, writing, if only we still had Bagram Air Base. Do you agree?
I don't know about Bagram Air Base, but I wouldn't doubt that the key leaders of the regime, including the supreme leader himself, are either very, very deep underground or as far away from the combat areas as possible. There have been dozens of these leaders who have been eliminated, many 40 of them on the first day of the war, and they're all legitimate targets. And as we know, Iran is deeply, deeply penetrated by the intelligence services of both the United States and Israel. And we tend to know where people are sleeping at night, where people are having lunch during the day, and they must be in a situation of constant fear and constant paranoia, quite legitimately, about who in their entourage is leaking and giving information to the Israelis and to the CIA and targeting them.
It's incredible to consider. Ambassador, finally, before we let you go, we have obviously heard repeatedly conflicting timelines from President Trump as to the duration we can expect for this conflict. At this point, nearly 2 weeks in, would your guess be that this is still weeks more ahead of us, or could it be months or longer?
I really can't answer that for the United States. I can only answer it for the people of Israel. We are sustaining nightly, daily rocket attacks. I run from where I'm talking to you now into the bomb shelter next to me several times during the day, and 2 nights ago it went on all night. We're nowhere near tired. We're nowhere near breaking. We are a very resilient population, very resilient society, and we know that we have no choice in this war. Whether fighting against Iran or fighting against Hezbollah, we're in it because there really is no out. The United States has a different set of considerations. It has political considerations. It is far from the Middle East. But I would only stress that if the war ends with Iran basically in control of the Straits of Hormuz, Iran having humbled oil producers around the Middle East, having even humbled NATO, because NATO hasn't responded, that will have very far-reaching ramifications for American security. And Iran will rebuild its capacities. And someday it will threaten the United States much more imminently. And the time to address that threat is not in years to come, but now.